Hello, how's it going? A while back I took a week off from work, holiday, and just made a game. And at the end of that week, I noted that I would be really interested to start looking at how to make this more automated, to make it more of an engine. And I talked about something called data-driven design. So what data-driven design is if we look in our file, we have defined a whole bunch of these like constants, and that's fine for a little demo thing, but for a big game, it would be a better idea to have some sort of system for dealing with this rather than hard coding everything like a little monkey, like a gremlin. That's sort of what I've got here. So this is a file. It has definitions of all the different object types, animation types, as well as information on images, stuff like the file name, the scale. You know, for each animation, we have, for every object type, descriptions of the info needed to load those animations from disk. What's the exciting part? What's the deal with this? Well, the deal with this is that this file is completely computer generated. It's compiled. I wrote another file that recursively looks through my image folder and generates all of these codes. Now there's a little bit to this. It's here in this image importer, and this is nightmare code. This is nightmare fuel. But here's the basic idea. So we have some sort of class that we can instantiate and fill out with the image info. Now there are sort of three stages. Let me take this back a little bit. I'll get there. So I had these image codes, object types for instance, and you would note that this object type spike is not just a straight up number. It depends on this object type count. And the reason for that is that the definition currently of object types is spread over multiple files. So if we go to our support file declares a bunch of object types, which the support file needs to know about, and then it declares how many object types it has currently declared, if that makes sense, so that the next file that comes in can read that off. So if we go over, we look at our main game. First we have support, then we import everything from image assets. But image assets, when it's compiled, when this file is generated, it can read back, from support. It can read back how many object types have already been declared, and it can continue from that point. So then if we go over to our file, we've done all the stuff with support, we've done all the stuff for image assets, and by the way, right down at the bottom, we declare, again, at this point, how many object types have been declared, and then we can dynamically go in and declare some more object types. So this is something that you can only really do with Python. If this was C and we were generating an enum in a file, we would actually have to scrape out all of those object type definitions and have a single point of declaration. Or we could do some fancy stuff with constants or something like that. But anyway, this is pretty cool. We've got these definitions which are split over multiple files, and fingers crossed it doesn't turn into spaghetti code. But let's have a look at the other bit of spaghetti code that I wrote, which was my image importer. So, like I said, these images, they all have scales associated with them because the size of image on disk is not necessarily the optimal size to show it on screen. Some things are going to need to get blown up, some things shrunken down. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking through, if this generated file already exists, then I'm looking through and I'm trying to read back all of the scales for the objects which have been declared, so that when I regenerate this file, I don't wipe over the original scales. So that's a little bit esoteric there, but that's basically what I'm doing. I'm going through, I am collecting the names of all the objects and animations that I'm seeing. And yeah, basically setting up some default objects from the existing file. So the core of this is a little bit rambly today, but the core of it is it's really good to be able to write source code from source code, and it's really good to be able to read source code from source code. That makes sense. But another thing that I'm doing is if we go along with this system and we don't have any checks and balances, then as we make more and more images on the disk, that generated file will get bigger and bigger. And it's possible that the person making the game could delete an image from the disk. They don't want it anymore, but an entry still hangs around in the generated file. So that's the housekeeping that I'm doing here, is I'm also looking through the folder ahead of time and saying, okay, well, what things are we actually observing, and how does that match up against the existing entries from the file that we just loaded? So it'll remove those entries if need be. And then the next stage is it actually goes through, loads the sprites. If we're seeing an image for the first time, it will create a new entry with a default scale of 1.0. Seems pretty sensible. But if we are seeing a sprite which already has an entry, then sure, I mean, the file name gets replaced, possibly, probably not, but the original scale still stays there, if that makes sense. And this will detect new frames. So if I go in and I have the mushroom and I want to add some more animation frames for the idle state, it will detect those and update the frame count. It'll probably work properly. But there we have it. Then the final stage is we actually write out the output file. And yeah, you can see here it's just standard text writing. One thing which is super useful is I'm adding these region codes. You may know in Python you can declare regions and they become these foldable bits in VS Code. And more useful than just folding, it's also really good for parsing files. It's sort of like a symbol table or labels or something. We can look through and see, oh, if we're starting this region, then our file reader can go into this mode or this other mode. And it just gives more context. It's really good. But yeah, I mean, I think that was all I had for today. Currently, it's sort of a stopgap. So ultimately what I would do is I would take this image loader thing and I would integrate it into my level editor so that we have it all in one place. That would be really good. I'll do that at a future point in time, but I just wanted to talk about this because I got inspired. This is actually how images are handled in Wolfenstein 3D. They have an editor which takes images from disk and generates a big archive of all the images, but then it also generates a C header, which describes the enums and how to retrieve the data. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. As you can see, everything's still working. And yeah, this is using the generated file.
Wonderland.
But yeah, that's it for now. Have a good one, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.